Hi, it's Alison from Ancestral Kitchen here, creator of Sowans the Scottish Oat Ferment and the Whole Grain Rye Sourdough Bread course at the Fermentation School. I'm here today to show you how to prepare fermented gingerbread. This process, which will create delicious treats for you over the festive season, is exciting, interesting and different because it has two distinct phases and includes a fermentation. So phase one, we mix up a 2-ingredient dough, which we then put aside to ferment or mature. And then phase two, we bring that fermentation back in, mix up a final dough, bake and eat the cookies. So today I'm going to show you phase one, which is how to mix up the 2-ingredient dough. If you want guidance after the fermentation on how to create the cookies, do look out for the Fermentation School's bonus material. So here we have 250 grams of honey, which for me is local unpasteurised chestnut honey, and 250 grams of flour, which for me is whole grain spelt. These quantities will make you 2 batches of 12 cookies, so 24 cookies in total. You can play around with the specifics though, you do not need to have exactly this. So with the flour, I'm using whole grain spelt, but you could use whole grain rye, you could use wheat, you could use gluten-free, you could use white flour as well, it doesn't have to be whole grain. With the sweetener, you could use any liquid sweetener. Now honey is great because, particularly unpasteurised, it's full of microbes, but you could also use one of the syrups, like barley malt or rice syrup. And it's also lovely to add in some molasses if you've got that. It's too strong to use totally molasses, but I like to add sometimes a quarter of this sweetener to be molasses. This sweetener you see here is the total sweetener that will go into your final cookies. There is no more sweetener added. Before we start, I'll just show you. These are rye doughs that I mixed up about 6 weeks ago, and they've been fermenting already for 6 weeks. So this is kind of what we're aiming for, a ball of dough. So what we're going to do is the equal amount of honey to flour. I'm just going to make a little divot, and then we're going to put this honey in to the flour. And when I start incorporating it, you'll see I use this spoon. I like to start mixing with a spoon, and then later you will see me transfer to using my hands. If your honey is particularly stiff, if it's been kind of around for a while, or it's a honey that is more solid than this, or if you're worried about being able to get this honey into the flour, you can heat your honey up first. So gently heat the honey, and then it will be more liquidy and you'll be able to pour it in. Okay, so I think that's virtually all of it. So I'm just going to start very gently trying to bring this together with a spoon. It's going to be a sticky dough. Already it smells just wonderful. So I'm standing on the shoulders of our ancestors here because honey spiced cookies and bread have been baked and eaten all over the world for centuries. There are so many diverse recipes and traditions. Most of the reading that I've done says the idea came to Europe, which is where I am, I'm in Italy, from China during the Crusades. There is actually a Chinese honey bread called Mi Kong. Although I've also read that the ancient Egyptians were making honey spice bread too. So, I mean, both of those absolutely amazing ancient societies had this. Of course, honey wasn't so prevalent back then as it is now. And because of that, it was thought of as magical. Both because of its healing properties, because as we know, honey is a wonderful healer, but also because of its sweetness, because that sweetness just wasn't available otherwise. And there are long traditions of fermenting a dough like this, leaving it to mature for long periods of time before actually baking up the final cookie or the final spice cake. So this phase, as I explained, is just flour and honey. We don't add any spices until we've let this sit and rest for a little while. So you can see how sticky it is. Okay, I'm trying to get all of that off my spoon. And then I'm going to put my hand in because you can see it's starting to come together. And I'm just going to bring it into a ball. So once this is into a ball and all together, I'm going to move it to a clean bowl. You probably could leave it in the same bowl, but I like things to be clean. And then you're going to put it somewhere cool. You do not need to put it in the fridge. So I generally keep mine in a place that's somewhere between 10 and 16 degrees centigrade, which is 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I will leave this now 6 weeks and I will bake it up a few days before Christmas when I'll add the rest of the ingredients, the spices, and make my cookies. As I said earlier, there will be a recipe to help guide you in that phase that will be part of the Fermentation School's bonus material. Okay, we're almost there. You can see there's a little bit sticking to this bowl, which I think is par for the course, but I'm trying to scrape up all I can. And we have a ball of beautiful whole grain flour and honey. If you don't have 6 weeks, don't panic. You can still do it, even if you've just got a few days to go until you want to bake up your cookies. Your dough and your final cookies will benefit from this fermentation, this rest period, even if you only have a few days. So there's the dough. You can see it's lighter than the one that I showed you earlier, the rye one, because this is spelt. I've got a clean bowl here. I'm just going to pop it in. So now I'm going to cover that and leave it to ferment, ready for me to bake my cookies up near Christmas.